Hello, and welcome to the National Council on Electricity Policy National Association Coordination virtual meeting. This is Carrie Worthington from the NCEP staff. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will not be opening the phones, so if you do have questions or comments for the panelists, please send them through the questions or chat box on your GoToWebinar application. Relevant questions will be asked immediately by me. I will read them out loud, and other questions will wait for the discussion at the end. But please feel free to type in your questions at any time. After the webinar, the presentation and the recording will be posted on electricitypolicy.org. The presentation is actually posted already, so we'll make sure that any updated presentations are posted as soon as possible with maybe additional links as the discussion progresses. Unanswered questions will be sent to the panelists. So if you send in a question and we can't get to it today, I'll send the question list to the panelists and they'll be able to see your contact information and get back to you as appropriate. You can join us at, or you can join our listserv at NARUC.org/myNARUC. Once you create an account, I can add you to the listserv, or you can select NCEP as an interest area, and you'll be automatically enrolled into our listserv. So we look forward to keeping in touch with you. Today we will hear from each of the National Association groups, and they will provide updates on events, activities, and resources, particularly those that pertain to NCEP topical areas and other themes such as multiple agency coordination. I will introduce each representative before their presentation. Again, my name is Carrie Worthington. I'm a NARUC employee, and the National Council on Electricity Policy is a project of NARUC, so I am also the NCEP program manager. My contact information is available on the screen. So if this is your first time joining us, then I will let you know that NCEP is a peer learning platform which examines the ways new technologies, policies, regulations, and markets impact state resources and the bulk power system. NCEP is currently exploring the evolving interface between the transmission and distribution systems as the resource mix on the grid changes. We're specifically looking at the areas of planning, operations, and markets. All of our resources are available on electricitypolicy.org. We also owe the Department of Energy a huge thanks for its ongoing support of NCEP and our activities. Most recently, we held our annual meeting in September in Austin, Texas. We looked at the evolving transmission, distribution, customer system coordination interface, and we focused on operations in terms of our planning, operations, and markets, some sub-themes. A summary report is now available on the NCEP website, as well as the agenda, presentation, and recording. It was a two-day meeting, so the recordings and presentations are broken out by day. In terms of new resources, the Transmission Distribution Coordination Resource Catalog is now available on the NCEP website. That was a development from the Compendium of Resources from the 2018 annual meeting that focused on planning, and is downloadable by PDF, Word document and Excel sheet, as well as through your web browser. We also have 3 mini guides available that describe coordination and engagement between public utility commissioners and local governments, state legislators, and emergency management agencies. Throughout the next year, we will have additional webinars on topics such as grid enhancing technologies and other transmission distribution system coordination efforts. In March and in September, we are going to be hosting the National Labs. They have many programs that support state energy agencies, and we'd like to connect our members with those resources. So we are hosting updates from them similar to this webinar in March and in September. We will also have a repeat performance of this webinar in June with the other national associations. We are happy to announce that we have found dates for our 2020 annual meeting, and it will take place the week of September 7th. We're hoping for somewhere warm. Excuse me, December 7th. Look out for more information on that as it becomes available. As I mentioned, we have the T&D resource catalog. We are looking for additional resources to be placed into the catalog. So if you have any, please send them to me. Instructions are available online. And we are happy to work with NASEO on our next mini guide, which is on PUC and energy office engagement. That is all of my updates for the National Council on Electricity Policy. I am not seeing any questions coming in quite yet, but please feel free to use the chat box. And now I am happy to introduce my director from the NARUC Center for Partnerships and Innovation, Danielle Sass-Burnett. Danielle?
Thanks very much, Carrie, and thanks to all of you for joining us today for this inaugural National Association Coordination call and webinar. I think it's a great opportunity for us to all be able to share with a broader audience the many activities that are going on and that are complementary across our efforts and our audiences. For those who don't know, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, NARUC, is the national association that supports all of the state and territories' public utility or public service commissions. Our member agencies regulate electricity, gas, telecommunications, and water utilities, and that to what degree varies by state. The Center for Partnerships and Innovation, where Carrie and I are located, is a state technical assistance team that provides support to all commissioners and commission staff across the country. We build relationships, develop resources, and deliver trainings to help commissioners and commission staff anticipate questions and handle complex issues that they are likely to face. We are supported by the Department of Energy, NIST, and other efforts. And the topical areas that we focus on include energy infrastructure modernization, which really includes things like natural gas, carbon capture and sequestration, electric vehicles, smart grid, and other similar issues, and really tries to provide information at the intersection of technologies and regulatory processes and activities. We also have a group of work around the electricity system transition or transformation that tends to focus on things like distribution system planning, comprehensive electricity planning that brings distribution, resource, and transmission planning together, activities around utility business models and valuation strategies that are emerging. We also do work around critical infrastructure and cybersecurity, and have an extensive expert team that works on cybersecurity in particular to support commissions in their oversight of utilities. And finally, we tackle a range of emerging issues. Currently, one of those is around grid interactive efficient buildings in partnership with NASEO, microgrids, and a range of other topics such as webinars that I'll talk about in a moment. We wanted to share with you today a few recently available resources. NARUC, the Center for Partnerships and Innovation, hosts a monthly webinar series on one Thursday a month. In the winter, back in November, December, and now January, our last few topics have been around renewable energy for large consumers, research and development and how that relates to the regulatory system, and using energy efficiency to meet demand. And in a few moments, I'll show you our upcoming monthly webinar topics. We encourage you to register for those. I know you'll receive these slides afterwards, and so you can just click on the links to get to any of those presentations. A few months ago, NARUC was pleased to launch a cybersecurity manual. This is a multi-document set of resources that includes an updated set of questions that commissioners can ask their utilities, and also a strategy development guide, a standalone glossary, and a preparedness evaluation tool that allows someone to review the information they've received from utilities about their cybersecurity preparedness and be able to understand what that means in terms of their maturity. It's a complement to DOE's C2M2 tool. In the planning area, we work closely with NASEO and have a joint membership in the Task Force on Comprehensive Electricity Planning that's focused on the alignment of distribution, resource, and transmission planning across the states. There are 16 state members and a standalone website In November, we released a resource library that includes a wide range of resources from various organizations that relate to comprehensive electricity planning, or integrated grid planning as it's sometimes called. So I commend that to you, and we will be doing our first update of that later this month as we've received some additional resources. Last month, we launched an electric vehicles document focused on key trends, issues, and considerations, and particularly looking at how commissions have made decisions about charging infrastructure ownership, the impacts of EVs on the grid, and rate design, and how that's being used, and what kind of considerations various commissions are weighing as they're making those decisions. So there are lots of examples in there and may be helpful. And then we have completed and will be releasing imminently 2 resources related to distributed energy resources and resilience. And those are something that you will find out about within the next week or 2 and be able to download. And then coming up in the near term, you can see we are continuing our webinar series, one around energy-related emergencies, and another one on transmission infrastructure in February and March. These complement our annual meeting, or sorry, our winter summit, which is not listed on the slide, but at the very top, thank you, is happening February 9th to the 12th in Washington, D.C. And that is Sunday through midday Wednesday, and we'll have about 1,200 people who are coming to discuss a wide range of issues in electricity, gas, water, infrastructure. We will be releasing in advance of that meeting 2 new papers around U.S. coal plant operations and coal ash law and regulation, and there are actually webinars with the key points from those papers that will be happening next week that you are welcome to register for. In conjunction with our meeting at the Policy Summit, we are in partnership with NASEO to put on a workshop for states specifically around microgrids. And we have a state working group with NASEO with about 25 states that have joined and who are going to be working over the next couple of years to figure out barriers and opportunities to advance microgrids where they're appropriate. And so the workshop will be the afternoon of the 12th, the morning of the 13th in DC. It is open to states, but only state folks, but you can get in touch with us if you're interested and not already on the list for that. We have 2 resources that will be released imminently around smart grid interoperability, and these provide information about the advantages and benefits of ensuring interoperability on the grid and with devices that extend back behind the meter to enable a cost-effective, modern smart grid. The interoperability learning modules will be particularly relevant for a wide range of audiences. Those are going to be short videos, but we will be posting on our website in the next couple of months that explain the benefits and provide examples of interoperability and how to take advantage of existing standards to support interoperability. And then we also wanted to share that NARUC is going to be hosting, in partnership with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, a Southeastern Regional Distribution Systems and Planning training. This will feature lots of overviews and in-depth information on distribution system and how various states have approached distribution system planning, featuring national lab speakers from across the country. The focus is on NARUC members primarily, but NASEO members are absolutely invited, as are others. I think NCSL or NGA have participated in the past, and we'd be happy to have folks. That will be in Jackson, Mississippi at the Public Utility Commission there. Finally, I just wanted to let folks know there are some activities that NARUC has underway that aren't necessarily broadly open on a month-by-month basis, but for which we will be releasing different materials over time. We started an electric vehicle state working group in November, December, this new microgrid state working group, which was launched in the fall and will meet in February, and a performance-based regulation state working group that was also launched in November and will be meeting in February and ongoing. So you can expect to hear more about those in the summer call, when we will probably have some resources that we can share. And finally, NARUC'S sister organization, the National Regulatory Research Institute, also hosts monthly webinars, and they have a webinar next week on PURPA and what's going on with PURPA at FERC and state perspectives. So you are welcome to register for that, and you can see that URL on the website, on the slide. Those webinars are free for anyone with a .gov email address. And that concludes my update for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Danielle. For those in the audience, thank you for participating today. Please send your questions through the questions box through the GoToWebinar software. Next, I'd like to introduce Kirsten Barkos from NASEO. She was with NARUC a few years ago, so we're happy to engage with her in this new role. Kirsten, you're all set up now.
Thank you, Carrie. Hi, everybody. My name is Kirsten Barkos. I'm with the National Association of State Energy Officials, and I look forward to any questions you might have. And thank you, Carrie and NCEP, for giving us the opportunity to provide you with an overview of what we're up to. So for those of you who don't know NASEO, we are the membership organization of the governor-designated energy officials from each state and territory, 56 total. We're organized across 6 regions, and we have a committee structure kind of like NARUC. Our committees include electricity, energy security, buildings, financing, transportation, and government affairs. And we provide technical assistance and research for our members on a lot of different variety of topics: good modernization, energy resilience, energy security, cybersecurity, transportation, and so forth. We also consider ourselves the voice of state energy offices in Washington, D.C., so vis-a-vis the federal agencies and the federal government. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you kind of a flavor and overview of what our current projects are. These are by no means all of our projects, but I thought it'd be interesting to just give you a few links to our website where you can explore more of these topics. Danielle has already touched on the NASEO NARUC neighborhood working group and the comprehensive city planning task force that we're doing together, so I won't go into too much detail there. We also have a joint grid interactive efficient building working group, also called GEB, which includes a lot of state energy offices, PUCs, the offices of consumer council from 16 states, supported by the USU Building Technologies office, and it informs states about grid interactive efficient building, load flexibility benefits, opportunities, impediments, and provides resources and support to inform state planning, policy regulations, and programs. We usually have 1 or 2 sessions at our NASEO annual meeting, which took place in September 2019, last year. And the GAB working group also puts out a lot of resources, webinars, and discussions, and I'll highlight a few of those that happened in the previous month going forward. We also work on state energy planning and energy security or energy assurance, and NASEO also works on transportation issues such as the forthcoming settlement and Rev West, and building energy codes in general. There are other energy and electricity and transportation topics that we touch on, so I invite you to just look at our website and browse there if there's something that I hadn't mentioned. The only other thing I wanted to mention is the U.S. Energy and Employment Report, which we put out together with the Energy Futures Initiative, and which is a comprehensive survey on energy and jobs across the United States and within each state that we will actually be going to release again in the upcoming months. Next slide, please.
Hey, Kirsten. You're coming through just a little bit like you're breaking up. If maybe you, yeah, maybe
is this better?
Yeah, that is better, I think.
Okay, that was a microphone, so maybe that was it.
Still breaking up, but we can hear you a lot better.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I'm on line, so next slide. So here are just our most recent publications. As I mentioned, the 2019 U.S. Energy Employment Report came out last year. We will have an update in 2020. And as part of the GAB working group, we also had a few publications related to the grid efficient building technology and policy, the grid interactive efficient buildings, a state briefing paper, and a road mapping tool for states to advance load flexibility. We also released in November an alternative fuel vehicles and emergency plans for Utah specifically, but I think it holds a lot of good lessons for other states. And all of these are linked, so feel free, once you look at the presentation online, to just click on the links and find them on the NASEO website. And the last one in the GAB series was Considerations for Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings pilot project. Next slide. And just finally, I just wanted to highlight a few of the NASEO upcoming projects and events. Just like NARUC has its winter meeting, NASEO has the Energy Policy Outlook Conference and Innovation Summit happening in February 4th to 7th here in DC. And this year is unique because we will have, in addition to our normal Energy Policy Outlook Conference, also a large portion dedicated to our Innovation Summit. So the latter half of the conference will look at innovation at state energy offices and how state energy offices play a role in fostering innovation and providing support to expanding technological innovation in the energy space. As Danielle mentioned, we will also have the Microgrid in-person meeting in February here in Washington. And NASEO has a lot of regional meetings coming up in the spring, and just like NARUC hosts webinars fairly frequently for our different committees. So I invite you to just go to the website for details for those upcoming events. They usually get posted 1 to 2 months prior to them happening, as well as having some energy assurance workshops that are in the planning works for the spring. We also are planning to release 2 publications on cybersecurity. One is the Energy Sector Cybersecurity Planning Guide for State Energy Officials. So that will delve into kind of figuring out what exactly the big beast of cybersecurity means for state energy officials, how state energy officials can engage with other agencies in the state dealing with cybersecurity, and what kind of federal support is available for state energy offices. We're also working with NARUC on a cyber information sharing white paper, which we're kicking off actually tomorrow, which will be coming out later in the summer. Then last but not least, we are having a couple more projects kicking off. One is Core West, which is the which will be working with the REV West states and the Clean City Coalitions to advance EV adoption in the Intermountain states. And that will include conducting a needs assessment for the region, identifying off-grid charging solutions for EV drivers, and conducting a baseline assessment of demand charges in the region. And just in general, raising awareness, EV awareness in the region as well. And then the Energy Equity Task Force will be working with state energy offices to better incorporate equity into program and policy design and explore best practices for engaging frontline communities. And not included in the slide, but also wanted to mention is that we also have an Innovation Task Force. So part of the Innovation Summit was creating a task force, so we will continue to look at the topic of innovation going forward this year. Next slide. And here's my contact information. I've also included the NASEO staff list. As you know, you can imagine this is not just me doing all these wonderful things, but it's a lot of people at NASEO. So I invite you to just check out who's working on more projects. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or get in touch with any of my colleagues if you need any further information than what I've provided today. And with that, thank you, Carrie.
Hey, Kirsten, thank you so much. We're sorry about the audio issues that we've been experiencing. We're thinking of solutions here, but if everyone can just sit tight, we're going to try David Springy and see if we're having audio issues with him as well. David, are you there? Can you just say a couple words, please?
I am here. Am I coming through clearly?
Yeah, you sound great. Thank you.
Okay. That's that super incredible NASUCA technology that we have. So I appreciate the opportunity to visit. My name is David Springy, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates, NASUCA. NASUCA members are the statutorily created advocates at the state level that represent customers before the state PUCs, state legislature, state government, and then obviously represent their interests through regional RTOs and at FERC. We have about 58 members in total. We operate in about 43 states. In addition to the statutory members, we also have some non-statutory members, some citizens utility boards and such that are recognized as advocates for consumers in the states. We are probably the smallest of the N groups, so we don't have a tendency to put out a lot of publications and such. We don't have the bandwidth to do that, but we do very much appreciate working with the other N groups. A lot of our members participate in task forces and on panels and on groups with the other N groups, and all of those publications that NARUC and NASEO and all NGA publish get pushed out to our membership also. So we very much appreciate working with this group. Our two primary things of note that we do each year are two association meetings, and so we sort of plan for those. I would note the annual meeting, the NASUCA annual meeting, we do in conjunction with NARUC. We work very closely with NARUC throughout the year on a lot of projects, but we both do our annual meeting together in November. That'll be November 8th through 11th this year, and I believe Seattle, Washington. And I want to mention that because if there are state commissioners or state commissioner staff on this call, please remember when you go to the NARUC annual meeting in November that we are there, NASUCA is there, and state commissioners and commission staff are welcome to attend any of the NASUCA sessions for free. You can come over. We'd love to have you. We actually try and get you to come over and participate on panels too. So for the NARUC side of the audience, please recognize that we're there and we would love to have you over. We also do a mid-year meeting, which is mostly NASUCA. We're in Portland, Maine this year, June 14th through the 17th. And again, these are fairly standard setups, but it's our opportunity to gather. It's the largest gathering of consumer advocates in the country twice a year. And we do our best to make sure that industry and other non-governmental representatives have an opportunity to speak and visit with us and share our interests. So if anybody wants to be on the emailing list and know about our meetings and come to our meetings, please just reach out to me. We don't have a fancy list. Just drop me a note and I'll put you on the list. I would note that we also do work all year. DOE provides some support through Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories. And very much like the 2-day distribution trainings that NARUC offers, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory works with us to provide national lab personnel to come to our meetings, and we usually have, or we always have a DOE technical portion of our meeting that's open to everyone. Also, we've been very much focused on grid level technology for the last couple of years, helping our members understand what is happening at the grid level and how to maximize and evaluate grid technology proposals at the utility level. So we do appreciate that support from DOE also. That's, I think, all we have in terms of external. We do a lot of internal, and I know a lot of our members interact with you, so we do appreciate that. But again, if anybody would like to get on the NASUCA list, please give me a call or drop me an email, just davidspringy@nasuka.org. NASUCA.org is very easy on the internet to find, and that has a listing of all of our policy and filings on it also. So happy to have any of you visit. But that's all I have.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Dave. Next, we would like to bring up the National Governors Association, NGA. Dan Loff is ready to provide some updates. Dan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everybody. I'm glad to be on the call with you all. And I'll take a couple of minutes to walk through our resources and some of our recent products, upcoming products, and other opportunities to engage with NGA and areas where we're providing technical assistance for the governors and their staff. So next slide, please. And next one after that. Thank you. Just real quick for those who aren't familiar with NGA, I think most of you probably are, but we are the membership organization for the nation's 55 state and territory governors. Next slide. We work in a handful of areas, including supporting governors on federal relations, consulting with governors on how basically to run a government, make appointments, build their teams, et cetera. And then I work in what we call the NGA Center for Best Practices, where we provide state policy support and technical assistance on a range of areas. I lead the energy program, but in addition to energy, we address transportation, we address water, health, homeland security, public safety, economic opportunities, and education. Next slide. In our division in particular, again, it houses our energy policy work, which is what I'll talk about in just a couple of seconds, but wanted to point out that we also address topics that I think will be relevant to others on the line, including transportation, water, broad mobility, and resilience solutions for infrastructure, and environmental issues of all sorts. Next slide. So diving deeper into our energy products and projects, I linked to 5 recent papers here that I think are relevant to this group. Those should be hyperlinks, so if the slides are shared, you should be able to access them, and they're all on our website as well. The first I'll mention is our State Energy Toolkit, which is really a modular product to highlight a variety of policy solutions and options for governors and their staff around 4 key areas: energy efficiency, clean energy, transportation, electrification, and then cyber and physical security of the electric grid. Another recent paper we released a few weeks or maybe a month or 2 ago is our new transportation electrification paper, States Rev Up. And in that we address a range of state policy and regulatory topics related to transportation electrification, including incentives to encourage electrification, opportunities with state fleets, charging infrastructure needs, regional coordination, ownership models, grid integration, and equity. Other recent papers that we released early in 2019, one around state protection of critical energy infrastructure information, which was in response to some requests and questions we were getting from our members. Another really diving deep into state cybersecurity, or cybersecurity for the electric sector and the role states can play, and a paper on state policy support for nuclear generation. Next slide. So looking forward to the coming year in 2020, we'll be releasing a handful of new papers on related and some new topics. One doing a deep dive on kind of all aspects of energy efficiency to highlight the roles that governors can play, working with, of course, state energy offices, PUCs, utilities, and others to advance the topic. Recognizing a lot of the activity happening at the gubernatorial and state level around clean energy and decarbonization goals, we'll have a paper and then a series of workshops that I'll talk about in just a minute, really helping governors understand what policies, programs, and regulatory structures they can put in place to meet those objectives and maintain the reliability, resilience, and affordability of the grid. We'll also have 2 papers coming out on cybersecurity. One, exploring cybersecurity governance bodies and the way states are structuring kind of cross-agency governance and governor-led activities around cybersecurity for the electric grid and for energy systems broadly. And then another paper that Kirsten just mentioned, exploring information sharing with states and the private sector for cybersecurity, and we're excited to be partnering with NARUC and NASEO on that. Next slide. We have Going beyond papers, we also have a handful of projects that we're working on and looking forward to hosting in the coming year. I bucketed these into 4 areas: infrastructure, resilience, and security. The second bucket reads clean energy, but it should really be broadened, I think, to read clean energy and grid modernization, because we have a few other activities there relevant to that group, or to this group: energy efficiency and affordability. And then there's our annual Governor's Advisors Energy Policy Institute, which is our kind of premier event for Governor's energy policy staff. In that first category, 4 projects that I'll mention. One is a new virtual resource center we're hoping to release in the next couple of weeks that will be kind of an online repository for a number of the energy security and cybersecurity resources available to the states, including NGA resources and resources from some of our partner organizations. So if you have suggestions for something that should include there, we are, of course, open to it. Soon thereafter, we'll be releasing the final version of our state resilience assessment and planning tool. This is a product we've been working on for a little while at this point, getting some state input and making adjustments, but it's really an assessment led by governors' offices to assess essentially where states are prepared for future energy emergencies and where additional resilience investment or planning is needed. We're looking forward to hosting a regional energy security workshop later in the year, and we'll have more information coming out there. And then importantly around Grid X5, which is a national exercise that took place in November of last year. We supported participation for 4 states in that exercise: Maryland, Idaho, Hawaii, and Colorado. And last week actually brought those planning teams from those 4 states in for a meeting with their state colleagues in the electric sector to really explore state after actions and findings. And I think for just about all the state teams, state energy offices and PUCs participated alongside the governor's offices and state emergency managers. On the clean energy and grid modernization side of things, I mentioned those regional clean energy workshops that we'll have later this spring, with more information to come soon. Really focusing on how governors can meet those goals and maintain the performance of the electric grid. We also have a National Transportation Electrification Workshop later in the year, really exploring grid integration of higher volumes of electric vehicles and what states can start to do now to prepare for those. And then one project not here that we are just wrapping up this month is a series of in-state grid modernization retreats, working with 4 states. Actually, we were just up in Trenton yesterday with the New Jersey team exploring vehicle to grid, and we'll be up in Rhode Island next week exploring what the state can do to meet the governor's executive order on heating sector transformation. On energy efficiency and affordability, we will be hosting in March a rural energy affordability roundtable to explore how new distributed technologies and state policy can improve affordability in rural communities. And we actually have a request for applications out that is due today for a learning lab on the energy water nexus, which will be co-hosted by Arizona and Wisconsin. So if anybody has questions on any of those or that last one in particular, I know timing's a little tight, but we may have some flexibility, so please do follow up and let me know. And then the last meeting that I'll mention, which is kind of our premier event for Governor's Energy Policy Advisors, is our annual Governor's Advisors Energy Policy Institute, which will be late June this year. Final date to be announced in DC, and that's when we gather the Governor's Energy Policy Advisors. We convene them in DC to kind of share best practices and challenges and discuss really a wide range of energy policy topics. So next slide. Excellent. So I will stop there. Appreciate your time. I appreciate the invitation to be on this webinar, and we'll look forward to any questions or follow-up that you have. So thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, Dan. Great information there. We are still taking questions through the questions box. If the audience would like to submit any, we will now turn to NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislators. Chrissy Harbin is the Energy Program Director there, and she now has the floor. Christy?
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to NARUC and NCEP for allowing NCSL to participate. For those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, we are the only bipartisan organization serving all legislators and legislative staff in the 50 states and territories. And all 50 states pay dues to NCSL, and we really serve as an extension of committee staff. Looking at, it's nice to go a little bit later in this webinar, certainly the issues that are affecting state legislatures are similar across all stakeholders. So I'm happy to be able to talk about some of the work that NCSL is doing and how it kind of relates to what the other end groups are doing. With that, next slide, Carrie. So NCSL covers any topic of interest to state legislatures. I work in our energy program, and I wanted to highlight, some of the bigger legislative trends that we're seeing, especially in the last couple legislative sessions. These are the energy topics that have gotten the most focus. Either they have the highest number of bills introduced by state legislatures, or they're the topics where we're seeing the most discussion and interest. And so, none of these, I think, would be too surprising for anyone on this webinar. Certainly, most of these topics have been discussed today. We're spending a lot of time developing resources, hosting meetings, conducting webinars on these topics to serve as a good resource for legislators, legislative staff, and most of the work that NCSL does is available to the public. So we post everything on our website. There's no login or anything required, so you're welcome to join on any webinars. We can certainly send meeting information or read any of our publications. Next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight just a few of our most recent publications. These were all published in December or right near the end of the year. The first being a large report that took us some time to put together in coordination with our task force on energy supply. So that's made up of about 30 state legislators, most of whom are energy chairs in their home states. We worked on a really comprehensive document related to grid modernization. So the report focuses on what the needs are for these aging electricity systems, what type of investments are being made, what are the new technologies and how they might be outpacing infrastructure. And then a majority of the report really delves into policy options, sort of looks at the lay of the land for different stakeholders, and especially looking at what role state legislatures should play in this process. And so we have a lot of hard copies. We're happy to mail those out to anybody who's interested, but it's also, the report is available on the link, and happy to talk about that more, share that with anybody who's interested. Additionally, we have a monthly magazine that goes out looking at a variety of topics of interest to state legislatures. In December, we published sort of the main article for the magazine on infrastructure investments and needs, challenges in the coming years. It focuses on a variety of topics, including water and disasters and transportation. We wrote a big section on energy as well and looked at critical energy infrastructure and sort of the biggest needs that we see at the moment. And lastly, I know this has been mentioned before, but I just wanted to give another shout out to the mini guide that we worked with NARUC and NCEP on regarding sort of authorities and roles of the PUC versus the legislature. It was a really great sort of first case study looking at some of those relationships across the country and what the current mandates and authorities are. We certainly hope that we can build upon that research, produce more publications, and as it relates to our meetings, we certainly enjoy the involvement of commissioners and commission staff, along with state legislators and legislative staff and the other stakeholders on this call. So that was our sort of first of hopefully more documents sort of looking at those relationships and the roles of each of those stakeholders. Next slide, please. I also just wanted to mention a few of our upcoming resources. These should all be published either by the end of the month or in February. The first, like many others have mentioned, we have a cybersecurity document coming out. This report looks at what state legislatures are doing as it relates to cybersecurity in the energy sector, what types of legislation that we've seen, what's kind of been introduced versus what's actually being enacted, the conversations and hearings, and what's going on across state legislatures when it comes to cybersecurity. In addition, we are about to publish a 2019 recap of sort of what are the biggest energy trends and legislation we saw across the country and where we think we're headed in 2020. We published a similar document last year at the beginning of 2019 that looked back at 2018, and it was a really popular sort of highlighting kind of 8 pages of what are the key trends across state legislatures. In addition, we've gotten a lot more questions and interest related to alternative fuel and vehicle issues, especially when it comes to electric vehicles. So we have a number of new resources that are coming out. NCSL closely tracks incentives for alternative fuels and vehicles and electric vehicles in particular, but we've really seen a huge growth over the last few years in adding additional fees on electric vehicle owners in a way to sort of offset gas tax issues. But as part of that, in 2019, we saw 10 states pass new electric vehicle fees. So we're coming out with a new online publication that'll look into that topic in more detail and sort of what the motivations are behind state legislatures passing some of these bills. In addition, we get a lot of questions related to charging infrastructure, and so we're coming out with a new document that'll answer some of the questions of, who is installing new charging infrastructure, who's paying for it, whether charging stations should be treated as public utilities, and sort of other questions surrounding that. So we hope to have that on our website in February as well. And then in addition, with most state legislatures in an active legislative session at the first part of the year, we're pushing most of our meetings into the summer and fall. But we will be starting with some webinars in March. Our first will likely be related to FERC's minimum offer price rule, and we'll have a variety of stakeholders and sort of expertise and opinions surrounding the impacts of that rule. So the date has not been set yet, but happy to send more information on that. It'll be in March. And then we have a variety of other meetings planned for later in the year. So we will also be doing sort of an energy security and reliability workshop for state legislators and other interested parties, likely in the fall. We have our annual meeting in Indianapolis in August, and we'll be hosting a variety of regional meetings around the country throughout the year. Next slide, please. So I wanted to include my contact information as well. Certainly always open to having anyone reach out, happy to share any information that we have. I also just wanted to highlight kind of 3 broader resources that we have that are publicly available on our website. The first is our legislative database. So we are tracking any energy-related legislation across the country, putting that in a public database. You can sort by topic or year or state and see what's going on around the country. It's a nice, quick view of the types of legislation that is available. We also have a monthly newsletter called Plugged In, and happy to add anyone who's interested to our distribution list. It comes out once a month and sort of highlights a variety of state legislation related to the energy sector that we're seeing, what are kind of some of the state and federal energy news that we think would be pertinent to legislatures. And then last, we have a web page that just lists all of our recent publications, and it's sorted by topic. So I only mentioned a few in this presentation, but there's a lot more available on our website. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carrie, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chrissy. We look forward to working with you also, and looking forward to your webinar announcement for March. So thank you so much for that. Next, we have the National Association of Clean Air Agencies. Miles Keogh is the executive director there, and he will be providing an update on some of their activities. Miles, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Carrie?
Yes, we can hear you great. Thank you.
Awesome. Friends, it's such a pleasure to be on the call with y'all. I used to staff the National Council and work with Carrie, and everybody who's spoken today is a friend of mine. It's really nice to be among people who I like so much on this call. I will give you the warning that I'm doing this call from an empty office at OMB, where I'm doing another meeting in just a few more minutes. So if security busts in and drags me out of here, that's what all the commotion is about. NACA is another N group. We convene the air pollution and climate change agencies in 116 cities and counties across 41 of the states and territories and the District of Columbia and other places. And we have 13 committees and are organized kind of the way that everybody else is organized as well, into committees. Unlike most of the other N groups, we are pretty new to the development of broad technical resources game. NACA's history has been more focused on interfacing with the Hill and with EPA and with other federal agencies on a policy basis, which the other groups on this call also do that. We have only in the last couple of years started moving towards some of the analogous kinds of technical assistance. It's just not how we were built. We aren't doing anything on cybersecurity. You'll be relieved to hear. I really look forward to seeing the products that are coming out from these other N groups. Among our different committees, though, we do have some stuff that I think it's probably worth, transmission and distribution isn't exactly the pitch down the middle of the job description of the clean air agencies, but we have a few things going on. Our criteria pollutants committee is fairly focused on the ozone and PM national ambient air quality standards development, and our mobile sources folks are mostly locking horns with the feds over the revisions to the clean car rules. But our mobile sources group is also working. We partner with NASEO on a VW settlement clearinghouse, and we have a VW's clearinghouse.org website that produces a catalog of all the different things that different states are doing, all 50 states are doing with regards to EV implementation, infrastructure implementation around that. And that's probably pretty relevant. Our climate change committee is pretty focused right now on trying to untangle what needs to be done for ACE implementation, the Affordable Clean Energy Rule. That rule replaced the Clean Power Plan. We built up some infrastructure around understanding what we'd need to do at the state and local agencies to do that implementation. And we're now retooling that infrastructure to try and look at the ACE rule. And those three committees in particular file a heck of a lot of comments on all kinds of things that I won't get into to try to ameliorate some of the changes proposed by EPA and make them smarter. We also have a permitting committee that I think has some stuff that we've done that y'all might find relevant. We have a website that's called For Clean Air Permitting, for being the digit, not FOR. For Clean Air Permitting is a website that our members can sign on to, and if other folks want to, you can reach out to me and I'll get you access to that site. It has a bunch of training information and all the different approaches that different state and local clean air agencies use to permit emission sources. But it also has some really interesting information about how to run an effective permitting process. And in particular, there's a ton of really great resources about how to reach out to and work with hard to reach communities. And I know that some of the other constituencies on this call also are interested, for reasons of environmental justice or just effective stakeholder communications, in pulling from the best practices for how to really get deep into hard to reach communities and give them effective tools to be effective partners in public process. We also have an enforcement committee, and in fact, Mike Dowd, who is the air director for the Commonwealth of Virginia, is the chair of our enforcement committee, and he's also the national council rep from the clean air part of the world. He's helping me organize a permitting and enforcement workshop. It's a national workshop that we're putting on in about a month and a half in St. Louis, Missouri, and we'll have a ton of output from that about how to be effective at streamlining your permitting stuff, what kind of electronic permitting tools are working in different places. Again, because permitting and enforcement is where the rubber hits the road for environmental justice, we'll have a very deep dive on disproportionately affected communities and how to serve them well in the clean air context. And then lastly, we've got two different committees that are doing some things that I think are archetypically useful for some of the folks who might be on this call. We have a resilience and sustainability committee that has put together a library of resources for how agencies can implement resilience and sustainability strategies. That's different than how to formulate resilience and sustainability policy that you apply to your state or local agency. It's instead turning the eye inward and saying, how do we, if we've been mandated by our mayor or by our governor or by our state legislature to implement resilience strategies across state government or sustainability strategies across the city government, how do we as an agency then go about following a checklist to ourselves become more resilient or to ourselves become more sustainable? And I can give you access to those resources because I think they're germane to a lot of different kinds of agency types. We have a training committee, and obviously our training committee does a plenty of, what are air toxics and how do you go about writing a Title V permit. But this year we're also going to be implementing webcasts on how to operate a world-class agency. And again, those webcasts are probably going to be fairly germane. Not all of them. Some of them are going to deal with asbestos removal and odor enforcement and stuff like that, which is going to be great for us and not so great for anybody else. But it's also going to have plenty of stuff about workforce issues, about how to manage a good succession process within your agency, how to do strategic planning, what to do when your revenue sources change, what other sources of revenue are available to agencies when they are faced with budget cuts, that kind of thing. And again, if you're interested in participating, those kinds of webcasts and those kinds of resources, we're really tuning them and pointing them at our own members. But if you're interested in getting access to some of that, I love you guys, so I'd be happy to facilitate that if you reach out to me. And with that seems to be the total gamut of the kind of more technical assistance offerings that we offer. Again, thank you for letting me come on the call today. And looks like I beat the clock without security dragging me out of here.
Amazing, Miles. Thank you so much for the update. So audience, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. The time is 2:59, so I think we will wrap up unless anything comes through in the next 20 seconds. I really want to extend my thanks and appreciation to our N-Group partners and collaborators for your leadership and for your time with us today and every day. We work together on a weekly basis, so thank you all for that continued partnership. For our members, we really hope that you're inspired to reach out to us, to reach out to the other N-Groups, and to reach out to your other agencies that work on these issues with you. Please keep in touch with us either through our listserv or just send us anytime you have a question. We can get you pointed in the right direction at least. So thank you for your participation today. You will see the presentation and the recording of the webinar posted on electricitypolicy.org, as well as our other resources that we mentioned today. And again, please make a My NARUC account to join our listserv. We'll talk to you soon, and we look forward to any other topical webinars or at least our March webinar with the National Laboratories. Thanks. Have a great day.